Hello and welcome to Jessie James Beads. Hi to you. I hope you're having a beautiful day. I know it's quite early in some parts stateside. It is 5 p.m. here in the UK and I'm led to believe it's noontime Eastern. Still don't get it. Still do not understand time zones. My tiny little brain just can't cope. I hope you've had a beautiful day so far today. The sun is shining here, but the temperature is pretty nippy, let's go with. I'm going to see if we're going to connect to the comments today. If you can't see me commenting immediately, then I'm very sorry. Oh, hello. That was naughty, wasn't it? Didn't expect that to hop into life. Give me a quick wave if you are there. Say hello and give us a shout. I'm going to drop us down to the board so you can have a bit of a look at what we're going to make together today. Karen says hello. It's noontime and 18 degrees. That's a little bit warmer than we have here, but not by too much. Helena's in, Deanne is in, Sue is in. Hello to you, my lovely folks. How are you? Nina is in saying hello, everyone. Jolly decent of you to join us live here on Facebook today. If you're watching on the blog or on YouTube, then hello to you. You won't be able to interact with the comments because I won't be able to see them, frankly. But if you're here now, hi, I hope you're having a good one so far. So it's noon on the East Coast and I imagine it's getting earlier as you go across to the West Coast. Still don't really understand it, but never mind. If we haven't met before, my name is Jem. I live in the United Kingdom and I'm here with you today serving you up a cup of lovely Earl Grey. And if you've never had Earl Grey tea, it's quite a fragrant tea, generally taken black or with a splash of lemon. Very pleasant. Anyway, the bits that we're going to look at today is this beautiful little bangle we can work up together. I lost the word for bangle then for a moment. That's about like me. Hello from New Hampshire. Hello to Felicia, or Felicia, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. Hello from sunny and hot California. I am jealous of you, Robin Rose. Charlene is in from New Hampshire. Hello to you. Felicia is in. Mini Mix is supposed to arrive today, says Sue. Hopefully it'll be with you very soon. Jenny is there. Hello from Virginia. Hello to you too. Let me just greet you up here. Hello, my lovelies. Big, juicy hugs and smiles all around for everyone. Jessie James World, who is greeting me on the live today. Celia is in from Overcast, Lancashire. It's been beautiful today, but a bit chilly. Pamela is in. Hello to you. Let's have a look. Yixie's in from Painesville. I guess OH is Ohio. Not up to date on my states, I'm afraid, so I'm just going to go as far as I can. Karen is in Toronto. Chilly for you today, I imagine, then, my love. Hello from Massachusetts, says Alison, and Felicia is from Michigan. Hello to you. I've got a very good friend in Michigan called Ange. I hope that you are all well and that the world is treating you just as kindly as it possibly can. I'm going to pop you back down to the board now. We're going to have a quick look at the bead mix. We're also going to have a look at the bangle that we're making today. Now, if I look a little bit zoomy, I've got a medical condition just currently, which is something to do with the inner ear. It's called labyrinthitis and it makes me just a little bit dizzy. So if my words are a bit funny today, it's because everything's a bit spinny. Everything is spinning at the moment. Good morning from Navarre, I want to say, in Florida. Florida, absolutely wonderful place. I hope you're having a beautiful day, my darling. Let's have a look back down at the wonderful beads we're getting to work with today. So a quick preview of our project together today. A wire wrapped bangle. And I'm going to show you a couple of different options with the closure. I quite like making a bangle that has its own clasp. If you prefer, what you can do is a couple of wrapped loops on either end and add in a clasp of your choice from your stash. Or we can make it much larger and tie the two ends together to make it a complete bangle. Absolutely up to you. So I'm going to pop that over in the corner for now. If you have your Earl Grey mini mix already, Lisa is in from California, where I understand it's sunny today. Hello from Tampa, also in Florida, is Teresa, and Helene is first visit from Houston in Texas. Hello to you. I hope you're having a beautiful morning so far, my lovely. Thank you very much for joining us live on the Jessie James Beads Facebook page. So this is our Earl Grey mini mix. Now this isn't all of the beads. I've extracted a handful ready to use. So it's a great value pot of beads. I want to tip them out to show you what we have for you. Trudy is glad to have made the live. Kay is in from Iowa. Hello to you too. Sharon's in from Arkansas. If I'm mispronouncing any of the place names or your names, I can only apologise. There we go. So those are some of the beads that you get in your Earl Grey mini mix. It's a beautiful collection and a colour scheme that is going to go with absolutely everything. So if I just spread those around in my little padparadsha pot, you'll see that you've got drops, you've got tassels, you've got spaces, you've got little daisy style spaces that are a bit like starbursts. Teresa says, I prefer Earl Grey as a hot tea. Me too, my lovely. Yvonne is in from Newcastle West in Ireland. Sorry, I misread the comma there. Hello from Southern Kentucky, says Angie. Leah is in. Don't worry about being a bit late. I'm just showing you the beads at the moment. It's all good. So we've got a massive feature bead, which I've chosen as my central feature. We've got drops. We've got incredibly beautiful shiny shinies. We've got some little rhinestone encrusted. Quite a feisty one, that one. There we go, let's bring that back. We've got rhinestone spacers and rounds. As I said earlier, we've got some tassels. I adore these metallic elements. They remind me of ancient hammered vases and goblets from which wine might pour. Absolutely gorgeous. Teresa says, sorry, my sarcasm is on the loose. Ha ha! You're absolutely fine. We get sarcasm in the British lands. It's all fun and games. This is a stunner of a piece. Individually, absolutely glorious. Collectively incredible, really good value. But that's not all you get, because you get all of these as well, all rammed into one of these pots. I still don't know how they do it. Debbie is in from Michigan. Hello, darling. Hope you are doing well. Thanks for joining us. So these are the beads that I've chosen to use today. Now, because I've got the spinny heads today with this labyrinthitis, which has visited me for a few days, what I have done is I've pre-threaded those beads on the core wire, because if we had to sit through me threading beads on a good day, it's kind of worrisome. So what I've done is I've threaded them thusly so that we can speed that along a little bit later. So let me just show you the beads that we're going to use today. Angie, thank you so much, my lovely. It's not a major impediment. I have some medication to help me kind of stay upright, but it's kind of like being drunk on a yacht at the moment. So, you know, there's that. I have got set up one of these bi-colour faceted rondelles. It's like a milky opal with an AB coating. Or a metallic coating rather. It's almost like a titanium, but on one side, so you can really see that milky colourway underneath. Hello, Anne, my darling. Anne is in from Sully, California. I've also got a two-tone glass round chubby bead. Now, these are fantastic. They're like a very, very broad coin bead. I'm also going to be using two of these fabulous dual texture rounds. So we've got high polish in the centre and then a matte buff on either side. Hello, says Linda from the Adirondack Mountains. I hope I'm getting better at pronouncing your location, darling. You're in upstate New York. You have the best videos. Oh, thank you, my lovely. You're so kind. Thank you very much. I would blush, but I'm a bit too cold to do that. Teresa has vertigo. Know how you feel. Take care. Hope you feel better. It's all good, my lovely. I'm happy to be here, taking my mind off it. I've also got a glass pearl. Now, it's almost, not quite, but almost a Tahitian colourway. Absolutely gorgeous. Love these. Again, these are one of my favourite metallic components. It's like a hammered brass disc. We've got that massive centre lozenge shaped faceted two-tone bead in the middle. And then the same going back in the other direction. Helene understands, she also has vertigo. Marisha is in. Hello, my darling. Marisha is from my home country. I hope that today has treated you as well as it possibly can, my love. So what I have done is I've pre-threaded those beads. If you have your Earl Grey mix ready, I don't know why I'm waggling that around. No idea. I don't know what's going on. If you have your Earl Grey mix ready, I'm just going to leave that here for a hot second so you can order those in the same order. And I'm using around about 14 inches 14 inches of that 18 gauge, which is equivalent to 1mm, gauge round wire. Now, I made the example piece in a rose gold colour, and this is German style from Beadalon, so that's a medium temper. I'm demonstrating in the raw copper because it shows up really nicely on the camera, frankly. So either way, this is quite a soft wire. The raw copper is quite soft. This is a medium temper. If you were going to use a very firm wire, I would say make the core the 18 gauge, 1mm. Again, this is 14 inches of 18 gauge. But you could use a 20 gauge, which is equivalent to 0.8mm, to wrap around, and we'll come on to that as we move through the tutorial today. Yes, rose gold is one of my favourites as well, Sue. It's so pretty. It's feminine, but it's not as bright as gold. I tend to not wear gold. My rings are white gold, because it just suits my skin tone just that little bit better. Some people love really, really beautiful golds. What you'll find in the Earl Grey is that there are some almost antique coloured golds, a muted gold. So another of my favourite wires is a bronze or an antique bronze, which is what you get if you kind of cross real gold, a true buttery yellow gold, with bronze. You get this kind of muted antique bronze, or antique gold colour rather. So they are delightful in that Earl Grey mix. I'm going to put the bangle back down. So as I said, I'm using, for everything for myself today, I'm using 18 gauge round. This is raw copper, but you could use 18 gauge for the core and bring it down to a slightly softer 20 gauge for the wrapping if you wanted to. So if you are making along with me today, Linda says you are getting better. It's pronounced Adirondack. 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 May not remember that. Just going to apologise in advance. Adirondack. I will try my hardest to remember that, but huge apologies if I don't quite hit that on the nose every time. I'll do my best. So I've pre-threaded my beads today just to make your experience a little bit more pleasurable. Now, all I've done at either end of that 14 inches of wire is put a tiny little curl, and that is there as a placeholder. It is to stop my beads slipping off as we go through that tutorial. So let me just pop you up to me for one last time. Hello, if we've not met, I'm Gem. I work with wire, beads, gemstones. I make crowns. I make crazy things. I make dragons. I make all kinds of things, but I do love to make a bangle. It's a beginner-friendly tutorial that we're going to be working up together today, so I hope that you love it as much as I do. Let's get back down and get creative together, shall we? So there we are. 14 inches of that 18 gauge round, and I have threaded my beads on thusly. Now, you don't have to use the exact same order as me if you don't want to. I simply just popped these down here, so if you were in possession of your Earl Grey, you could play along with us today. So I'm going to move these beads. This is what the whole mix looks like. All in one. That's what it looks like when you get them all together. No chance of getting that back in the pot, I'm sure. There we go. So there's loads and loads to play with, loads to choose from. You could play around with the order if you wanted to, but you've got an absolute bunch of beads to go there. From your Earl Grey mini mix, let's get cracking with the tutorial, shall we? Marisha is loving my dress. Thank you so much. You know I have a thing for dragons. I've finally found a really lovely dragon dress that I adore. It's kind of shapeless, but then so am I. It's all good. So this is the piece we're going to make together today. What you'll see is that there's loads of coiling at the back of the design. Now, in this way, what you can do is use the same bead order, but leave yourself some space at either end, and then you can change the size of the piece. Now, I'm going to demonstrate for you today how to create an all-in-one bangle. So if I pop my wrist in there, and again, just to explain, if you didn't catch me earlier, I do have a little bit of a vertigo type illness today called labyrinthitis, so things are a bit spinny. If I miss the odd word here or there, many huge apologies. That's how we're going to create our bangle today, and I'm just going to take that back off like so. Again, it's a bit spinny, so you can just unhook that with a nail. That's how it works, all in one long stretch of wire. If you don't fancy that, if you don't feel confident, or if you don't find this kind of design comfortable, just repeat at the opposite end a wrapped loop, and I'm going to show you to begin with a wrapped loop anyway. So there we have our bead order, and there we are going to get going. So what we need to do is just put a little bit of warmth into our core wire. As I mentioned to you earlier, I've pre-threaded my beads because it's just slightly more pleasant for you if you don't have to sit through me trying to find bead holes. And there we go. So just a tiny bit of warmth. It doesn't need to be too fluid. We actually want it to be quite strong, to be quite honest. So do not be feared about that one. Let's get rid of that message. There we go. Okay. So what we're going to do is start in the centre. What I want to do is to focus on my central lozenge bead just here. And we're going to have a look at wrapping around this to begin with. So what we need to do is scooch all of those other beads back out of the way. Thank you for that, Anne. That's very kind of you. Do not worry about me. I'm going to be absolutely fine. I'm only telling you, not for a pity party, but just so that you can please excuse me if my words aren't as 100% clear as they ought to be. So I've scooched all of my beads out to the side, and on my 14 or so inch length of wire, I've just put tiny little curls on the end to stop the beads from falling away. We're going to start with this gorgeous, almost two-tone lozenge faceted bead in the centre. Now the next part is the fun part. I'm going to just pop you up to the face cam for a second. I have got around about 3 feet, so 36 inches of that 18 gauge or 1mm gauge wire. It's quite a lot to work with. So what I'm going to do is find the centre of my wire. And it's really difficult to show you this on the desk, which is why you're up here with me. And I'm just going to put some heat through the very central part before just swiping in one direction, swiping in the other direction. And if I bring you one end round, what I'm going to do is I'm not putting really any pressure or exertion into this at all. I'm making a small coil at one end just to get the wires out of the way. All the way over to the other side now, I'm going to do the exact same thing. So a little bit of heat through there and then just turn them around. We're going to be unfurling this, so it's really important that you heat this just with your hands before you start turning that around. And what you end up with is, well, it looks a bit like a crazy hairdo, doesn't it? But what we're looking to do is to control the wire. If you are working with small children or pets near to you, having 36 inches of wire flopping all around the place isn't really great for anyone. So what I've done is I've taken a way to control at the ends of those wires, and I've just coiled them up a little bit. We're going to be working in the centre. If you're slightly off to one side, it doesn't really matter, but do your best to kind of judge that you've got 2 coils on either end that are very similar. Let's get you back down to the desk just here. I will let you know later on, Anne, where I got my dress from. It was not terribly expensive, that's all I'm going to say. So I'm going to again put some heat into that central segment so you can see what I've done with that long length of wire. We're working in the centre, but we don't want to overstress those ends. We will need them. So a lovely bit of heat in that middle. And what I'm doing also, whilst I'm heating that wire, is putting a bit of curvature to it. So I actually really enjoy handling wire, and I hope that even people who are afraid of wire will get to feel that joy as well at some point. So what we're looking to do is to create a little bit of a rainbow shape around the outside of that lozenge. Now it's a glass-based bead, so what we don't want to do is put any pressure on it whatsoever. You can be slightly more brutal with your faux pearls and with your metallics, but when you're working with glass and crystal beads, another glass bead, another crystal bead, what you don't want to do is pull the wire terribly tight around it. What you can do is overstress it and crack a bead, and we don't want that because the beads are so beautiful, as are your fingertips. So a little bit of heat, a little bit of warmth, a little bit of heat, a little bit of warmth. What we're going to do now is ensure that our lozenge central bead is dead centre on that strand of wire, which we've pre-stranded all of those beads onto, and we're going to allow that wire, the longer length of wire. What will happen is that they will get caught up. I'll show you how to undo that. It's just a case of following that around, getting that back undone. It's not really the end of the world if you have to unfurl one side. So I'm just going to unfurl the one side like so, and you are out of trouble. If you can, just warm that back over. It's really useful to actually give you demonstrations where things don't always go to plan, because it shows you how you can fix that without breaking your wire. So you're just going to put that warmth back into the wrapping wire. This is our wrapping wire. This is our core wire. And I'm going to allow that to circle over the top of the bead. If you prefer, you can turn those funny curls outwards. They're less likely to catch on each other, but do make sure that that is with warmth in the wire, like so. Looks even more like a crazy hairdo now. So we've got that slightly arcing rainbow type form over the top of that central lozenge shaped bead. What I want to do is to hold it firmly, but I'm not crushing it. We are respectful of our beads when we're working with wire. So I need to have the side. I'm right dominant. If you're left dominant, you may prefer to work in the opposite direction. For me, non-dominant hand holds the wrapping wire, the lozenge shaped bead and the core wire, like so. I'm going to hold that into position whilst my dominant hand puts extra warmth into that little section of wire coming swooping down over the top of the core. I'm going to draw that all the way around and then back up again. Now the beads are fluid and that's absolutely fine. And what we've done is we've come over the top of the core all the way around once and then gone back in the same direction from where we started. What you'll see is that that's quite a loose collection of curls moving around the core. So what I'm going to do is just draw those slightly more firmly together. And to do that, I'm going to slide that bead out of the way for a second, tighten up that coil, and then bring that core bead, that central bead, back into position. So let's just get that to sit in the centre. And then make sure that this is nice and tight over on the direction that we're moving. So it's basically from here on in repeating that same design. What I will do in a second is I will bring that central piece of wrapping wire over the top of the core on the opposite side. Let's see if I can do this left-handed. I'm not left dominant, so this might go horribly, horribly wrong. Again, we're looking to be very cautious about the pressure that we put onto any bead that is glass-based. Metal beads are absolutely fantastic for this design, but I want to show you how you can achieve this with the beautiful Earl Grey mini mix. So I'm going to support, if you're left-handed, this is the direction you might prefer to work into. I'm going to support the whole thing. I'm going to ensure that I don't pull the wire too hard down in this direction. I'm going to allow that to circle all the way around the core wire and then bring that back up again. Considering I am not left-handed, that didn't go too badly. So you can see if I pop this down onto the board, we have our wrapping wire over the top of the core wire on both sides. What that leaves us with, and I'm just going to work onwards to the right because that is simpler for me to work with. What I'm going to do on this side is now show you, bring the next bead in, my wrapping wire. It's the same gauge. These are both 18 gauges. If you want to use a 20 gauge for this until you get the feel for the technique, absolutely do. It's really, really cool. It's a beautiful technique to work with, and I come back to this time and time again. I've been making it for nearly 8 years now. So I love these metallic beads, and yes, I know I'm spinning the beads again. It's really naughty. I'm so sorry. So the wrapping wire is underneath the core wire. I'm going to support my next bead in position, draw the tail of the wire over the top. So it's coming from underneath the core all the way around the bead and over the top, and working in this direction over to the right. That's what we're going to do over and over again until we've got all of these beads set. So again, I'm going to pinch the bead and the wrapping wire and the core with my non-dominant hand, take that tail of wire all the way around and make it travel 1.5 times. Now you might like to just tighten that up if it's slightly baggy. Again, using that slightly lighter gauge wire will enable you to learn the technique before moving up to a heavier gauge wire. It's okay to spin the beads, it's fun when they have movement, absolutely. What often happens with this technique is it moves slightly tighter than you want it to and you lose the spinniness. Certainly on beads that are shaped, when you have a round bead, let's just grab the other one, you should still be able to spin it. Yeah, absolutely. So some of them will spin, like that one will spin around almost 360, but not quite. There is still movement in the perfect rounds though. So you're absolutely right, it is kind of fun. Tonya says, I love this bangle. That's very kind of you, thank you. So I'm going to whiz all the way along one side. It's the exact same technique. We're starting underneath with our wrapping wire. Pinch the bead and assembly all together. Draw the wire around. Because you're holding beneath and on top of the bead, the wire has no choice but to go where you want it to. Karen says, I've been working in wire for years and was never taught anything about warming the wire up with my fingers. Thank you for teaching this technique. That is really kind of you, Karen. I was never taught anything like this either. It's something that I found for myself, and I am hugely interested in sharing my love of gemstones, of beads, of wire with other people. I want everybody to enjoy working with wire. So many people are afraid of it, and you don't need to be. So if I can share something that makes your life easier, then hopefully it will be something that you can take away and maybe share with others. Anne says, beautiful bangle. Thank you very much, my lovely. So again, the wire comes from underneath, around the top of the bead, pinch the whole assembly together, draw that tail of wire all the way around 1.5 times, so it circles around, and then it goes off the direction where it started from. So it started over the... Yeah, so it goes over the top of the wire all the way around and comes out from underneath. We're working again with a round bead now. Now you'll see that my core wire is a little bit bendy. Don't worry about it. It's not a problem. It'll be fine because we're going to be very gentle with this bangle and it will adapt for us later. Susan says, sorry I'm late. It's okay. It's not, you don't have to sign in. You can catch up at the beginning if you feel the need to, but it's lovely to have your company, Susan, anyway. Margaret is in from the fantastically beautiful and historical city of Edinburgh in Scotland. Good evening to you, my love. So if your wire starts to get a little bit tense, just give that a little bit of love and a little bit of heat. Does this technique work for all metals? It certainly works for sterling silver. You can overwork lighter gauge metals. Now, I've worked in brass, I've worked in bronze, I've worked in steel. Steel I used once as the end of my fingers did not survive. I did not like it. I won't do it again. Lots of people work in steel and they really enjoy it. It's not for me. I love working in copper. You need to experiment, Karen. See what works for you, my love. So I'm just going to push those beads out of the way for a second. A little bit of heat. Pinch the assembly together, draw the wire around, and you can see how the bead helps you. That little bit of heat, you've got a perfect little rainbow shape. So all the way around again, and I'm just pushing that coil towards the preceding bead, being respectful of the bead itself. So do we have spin still in this one? There's a little bit of spin in it. If you feel that you'd like more spin, you can reverse that ever so slightly by just opening the design out. Sometimes you mark the wire and it's just not worth it. Sometimes you shatter a bead. So it's maybe best just to control how tightly you bring that over. So we're going to go for the last two on this side. A little bit more heat, a little bit more heat. Pop the bead into position. Now, if you want a little bit more space and you want some more spinning activity, what you could do is go for a very, very wide arch, or arc if you prefer. So for my design, I love to have the beads nestling up against the metals. I have taught, and do I have one with me today? Let me just have a look to see if I've got a spare bangle that I teach this design. I do not have one to hand. I'll try and find it and bring it out to show you at some point soon. Because it shows you how, oh no, I do have it. Hang tight, stay still, don't go anywhere. A variation of this design. Let me just pop our Earl Grey out of the way for a second. This is a variation using burnt coral and marigold from last year. So what you can do is arc that wire all the way around in very large swooshes. You get a completely different effect, but obviously you get total mobility on those beads. So this is a very similar, albeit incredibly layered bangle. So this is absolutely a fidget spinner. If you need something to move around, if you are feeling anxious, then this is a really lovely design. So the basic, whilst this looks incredibly different, the basic techniques can be transferred. Sue, wow, I love that one. Margaret says beautiful. Sue says I tend to fidget, that's why I like to spin beads. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much for your kind comments on the burnt coral and marigold. That's something that perhaps we can revisit on another day. It is a beautiful strand. I've no idea if it is in stock or not. So that was one that I made last year now. So what we're looking at today is the Earl Grey. Now at the header of today's video, I've popped in links for both the US and the UK sites, as the Earl Grey Mini Mix is one of our transatlantic designs. So all of those beads are left over from making these bracelets, bangles today. So I'm going to continue. I might just draw that down so that it matches in with the rest of the design aesthetic, but to allow greater space between the bead and the wrap. So what you could do is do your wrap just here. It would definitely allow you to spin those beads. I'm going to continue in my original design aesthetic for this one and show you a spinning bangle at a later date. Some of these may still spin anyway, so I'm just going to rotate that around, put the next bead into position from underneath, around the edge of the bead to over the top. I've been teaching this one for a good 8 years, 7 or 8 years at least. It's beautiful and I love it. So what we would do is rotate the wire at the end around the core. We're taking our wrapping wire now, and having put heat into this, there's still a little bit of flexibility. So I've got 4 little wraps at the end here so far. What I would do next is flip the design over. So if I turn that around like so, there we go. Linda is in from Tucson in Arizona. Hello, my lovely. How are you today? So I flip this over to make sure that I can continue with my right hand, which is my dominant, my helpful hand. The other one doesn't work quite as well. It's quite arthritic, so I always tend to work towards the right. If you're south dominant or if you have troubles with your right hand, simply invert and work in the opposite direction. What you will need to be aware of when you flip the design over is that suddenly your wrapping wire is on top instead of underneath. So imagine there is a mirror down the center, and you'll be able to see what you need to do. So I'm just going to do a couple on this side. So my wrapping wire is over the top of the core wire, just here, just here. So that means I need to skirt it around that first bead. The other ones just want to get in on the act, they're too excited. Skirt that around and then wrap 1.5 times. So if I pinch the bead assembly and take the tail all the way around, we're again moving in the same direction. What should happen is that your wire will be in the correct position and you'll be able to make the leap mentally that you're going from on top to underneath the core instead of the opposite way around. The first couple of times I made this design way years ago, 8 years ago, that caught me out and I ended up doing it wrong. So just something to watch out for. But if you imagine there's a mirror split down the middle, you should be able to work it out fairly easily. I'll tell you what, whilst we're catching up with what people are saying in the comments, why don't I just finish this side and then we can complete the bangle together. So from the top, around the edge of the bead, allow that to skirt around 1.5 times, so all the way around once and then a half time, all the way around once and then a half time, all the way around once and a half time. Margaret says, I had a friend when I was at school who moved from Tucson. Donna says, oh no, I'm late. Hi Jem, don't you worry. It's all good. Glad to have your company. Leah is in. You're helping me to be less afraid to work with wire. That makes me incredibly happy and very proud. Cynthia says, good morning, Linda. Looking forward to your tutorial in beads and blooms. This is gorgeous bracelet too. I'm from Colorado Springs in Colorado. Absolutely fantastic. Parker here. Oh, I'm not quite entirely sure where that is, my lovely, but it's great to have your company. So I'm just going to wrap those last 2 beads. So from on top of that core wire, skirting around the edge of the bead, 1.5 wraps, next bead into position, and then we're going to end up with 4 wraps on this side so that we match what we have over here. So what I tend to do, if I am going to an event and I think that somebody might come along and want one of these custom sized, is I will get some of these ready to this position. Because what you can do from here is customize the overall fit of your bangle. Sandy's in from Massachusetts. Hello to you. Leah says, beautiful. Thank you so much. So what we can do is vary the distance between our last bead and the closure so that it fits the wrist of the purchaser. So if I just flip this over, if you missed earlier on, I have a form of vertigo today, so I'm a little bit dizzy, so if it doesn't go on the first time, then you'll forgive me. So that is how the system works. And what you can do, as I say, is just leave it part finished, and then you can vary the distance between the final bead and your closure. You don't have to have a hook and eye closure if you don't want to. I like them because it means you've just got one core wire and one supplementary wire. If you wanted to, what you could do is very simply create loops on both ends. Now, this is a curved wrapped loop. Can you see how it curves down inwards towards where the wrist sits? That is because when you're working with a hook and loop, it makes getting it on so much easier. So much easier, so that also slips back out. So I'm going to show you how to finish this bracelet now. Let me just pop that back together and pop it up in the corner so you can still see that. Let's say that we needed to do another, gosh, I must have done loads of wraps on this one. So let's take it up to about 10 wraps on either end, and that should be a good size. So that's 5, that's 6, that's 7 around the one end, 8 around the one end, 9 around the one end, and then 10. So let's say that we are going to add 10 wraps on here, and what you can do, ask your client to measure their wrist. This is not for me showing off, by the way, it's because I lose things really easily, and if I don't put my name on them, I lose them all too often, and then I have to replace them. So I'm not being silly. So what you can see is the beaded section alone is 5.5 inches in length. Well, even for me, my wrist is just under 6 inches around. It's a very tiny wrist for a very plump lady. That's a really tiny wrist area. So hence I've added loads of coils on the end, either side, and then you can work out what kind of size you need. Again, you can very simply pop a wrapped loop on both ends, and then use any type of closure you want. You can use hook and eye, or some people prefer the security of having a lobster clasp or a parrot clasp, or even a bolt ring, something like that. So there's loads of ways that you can do that, and measuring your client at your event means that you can customize this without having to sit through the whole rigmarole. Cynthia says, I love your closer too. I think I would put a dangle on the end of the closer. That's a really good idea. Susan loves this. Thank you very much, my darling. Stephanie is being delightful. You are beautiful and lovely too. Watching from France, says Sarah. Hello, darling. I hope you're having a beautiful time. I can't remember very much of my schoolgirl French, I'm afraid, but yeah. Bonsoir. I love that you incorporate the clasp into the bracelet, and I have a hard time finding rose gold clasps. Absolutely. So if you're working in the same reel of wire, you don't have to worry about colour matching quite so much. Anne has to go, meeting with mum and sister for breakfast. Have a fabulous breakfast, darling. See you next time. So let's move on. If you imagine that we have taken 10 wraps on the left-hand side, as it is on your screen right now, and pop on a simple wrapped loop. I've shown you wrapped loops about a gajillion times. What I want to show you is the slightly more complex end. If you struggle with wrapped loops, head over to my YouTube channel and there is a dedicated video to wrapped loops. So wrapped loop on this end. What we're going to do now is recreate this shepherd's hook design. What you will find is even when you've done lots and lots of wraps, there's loads of wire left over, so you can put a coil on, which adds drama, detail, and can hide where your two sets of wraps meet. If you don't want to put a little coil on the end, you absolutely don't have to. Some people detest them. That's fine. You could put a tiny one on, or you could simply make the two ends meet neatly and snuggle them down with those pliers. Let's crack on with this shepherd's crook. So if I leave that in view, that's what we're making together now. I'm going to flip this over in the hopes that I don't end up with wire all over everything. I'm just going to bring this down a little way, and then I'm going to trim away some of this length just so I don't catch it on everything. What you will see now, if I leave about a 2-inch length on the end there, is I've got loads of wire on the end. Now, when I'm working with a design like this, I like to leave myself options. If you find that a client has got a considerably larger wrist than you normally make for, using this length of wire will give you an option to still fit for them, as well as obviously having a clasp and an extender chain. So there's lots of ways that you can be accommodating is what I'm trying to say. So at the end here, I'm just going to unfurl that section. Let's have a look. Donna says, I like having it flatter on the underside of my wrist that rests on a table, so whatever this is works for me. Excellent. I don't know what people call it. I just call it a hook and eye. So I'm just going to open out that section for now and just give that a bit of a straighten. Now, before I made that tiny coil, I really warmed the wire, so it should still be usable. my YouTube channel. Now, I will put a link in the comments after the show. It's Gemhawks Jewellery, I want to say. So if you go www.youtube.com/c/Gemhawks Jewellery. But if you do a search for Gemhawks on there, it will come up. Do not worry. So what we need to do is to turn this wire back on itself. And what we're going to use for that is my bent chain nose pliers. You could use any flat facing pliers. You could use standard chain nose pliers if you prefer. I use the bent ones because it means I can kind of get just a little bit underneath. So we have around about 3 inches of a tail to work with. So I want to be just ever so slightly closer to the coil than to the cut end. And I'm going to turn that back on itself like so. This is not the coiling wire. This is the core wire. I'm going to bring that all the way back down towards itself so you can see that we're making a sort of a flattened hairpin type shape. There we go. So I'm going to close up this end just here. Now what will happen is it will try to twist. What the wire wants to do is to be stacked one on top of the other. We want to pinch it really firmly just here. If you struggle with that, you may like to hold those 2 sections of wire between the flat sides of a set of pliers. I'm going to pinch with my thumb because it's easier for me to demonstrate to you. So in very, very small movements, I'm going to close this end up so that our racetrack hairpin becomes incredibly tight. You'd have to really slow down to first gear to go around that. Let's give that a bit of a squash. We want those 2 wires to sit side by side flat as if they were on the desk. So you can see we've got around about 1/2 inch excess of the core wire after it's come back on itself. And what we want to do is just open that out slightly and grip hold of the cut end of that wire. Now I have to think really, really hard now which way I want the wire to travel, whether I want it to go underneath or over the top. If that comes up to in this direction, then I want this one to go over the top, I think. So I'm going to take that wire over the top of the core. So you can see the core wire has travelled out to the end. It's come back sharply on itself, and it's now doing a right turn back over the top of itself, over the top of its core wire. Ideally, I'd like that to be quite a sharp bend, so I'm just going to push that past the point and then bring it back a little bit so that that will sit side by side with that core. Once I've got the shape, which is very angular, that I'm looking for, I'm going to pinch those 2 wires side by side as firmly as I can without crushing where one wire crosses over the top of the other. I'm gripping firmly on 2 side by side wires. I'm going to push that tail over the top and draw it all the way around, and it's going to wrap back on itself towards the centre of that bangle. Now what will happen is, as that wire has worked quite hard, it's getting firm. It will want to pierce a hole in my thumb. And I don't fancy that, if I'm quite honest. So I'm going to turn the design upside down for now. I'm going to hold on to that bent around section, exactly where I held it as I was rotating around a moment ago. I'm then going to take my bent chain nose pliers. Let me just bring that into the light slightly better. I'm going to take that tail and I'm going to force it to go around the core wire in very, very, very tiny movements. Slow wins neatness. So what we're looking to do is, now I can take that second set of pliers away. You can see there's a tiny sticky outy bit at the bottom there. I'm just going to cut that away. What you could do is work a little bit harder and just get that to sit really, really neatly against the core wire. What I need to do is make sure that these 2 wires coming back and around on itself are side by side, and I'm also going to add a little bit of strength to them. Now you could put a steel block and hammer that lightly, not touching where the wrapping is, or you could very simply open and close with those flat facing pliers. Now you'll see there's a bit of a gap. I slightly misjudged how much space I needed to allow for this to come back, so it's fine because I've got a little extra. The bangle will only be about 1/8 of an inch longer than I had planned, which I think is absolutely fine. What I will do is I will simply do a couple fewer wraps on the other end, and if you have your client sat by your side, you can custom fit it from one end or the other. So what I'm going to do now is just bring that excess tail and wrap it all the way around a couple more times to fill that gap up, and then just sit that wire out of the way for a second. So because our wrapping wire is sitting on the top in the centre, I'm going to decide that this is the up side, the outside of the bangle. If you preferred the look of it that way, go that way. It doesn't matter. As long as you decide which way you want to be the inside and the outside, that's going to impact what we do next. Doesn't matter one way or the other, which way up you prefer it. I'm going to go for that side because I like it slightly more. So in essence, what I'm going to do now is start very, very gently, just curving that around just a little bit. Very, very small movements. And I haven't over tightened those coils between each bead, because that again is a risk. So if I pop this down onto the board, hopefully you'll see that start to form even rather. I can do words, just not today. We're going to get that to curl around so that it sits over the back of the wrist, and it is a gentle procedure. Gentle procedure. That's really very, very kind of you. I'm very grateful for your kind comments and your lovely warm feedback. Thank you so much. I'm not very good at taking compliments, so I'm just going to say a massive thank you, huge gratitude. I do appreciate it. So you can see that we've started to form that around the wrist shape. It will work for very, very tiny wrists, and it will work for a little larger wrists. So you can see we've got a whole excess of wire at this end, which you can turn into a wrapped loop, which I could show you if we have enough time at the end. The thing that you're interested in seeing today is how to create that shepherd's crook. So we've decided that this is the inside, this is the outside, and we've decided that because we've shaped it so. What you need to do is bring that last coiled section around, and again, very, very gentle. If you grab hold of this and go meh and just bend it, it's not going to stay strong. If you coerce and coax and ask the wire with kindness, your jewellery will last so much longer. It really will. So here we are looking at the straight but double piece of wire. I'm going to grip a hold just past where we coiled it back around itself, and I'm going to push that down in towards the wrist. So if I pop that down, obviously we've got that wire in the way, so let's just yoink that around. You can see that the angle is going back in towards the wrist, or where the wrist will sit rather. I'm going to use my multi-step bail makers. You could use round nose pliers for this. You could use a pencil or a pen or any round form such as that. I think probably I'm going to use step number 3 today, and just start to rotate that end section, that doubled over end section around, and then push the last little bit in. So that's quite a small hook. What I'm going to do is put a kick on the end here, like so, because that makes it so much easier for going into the hook assembly. If I just borrow this one, you can then pinch that down ever so slightly. Let me just bring that back out into the slightly better light. That is how it's going to work. So if I pop the original just over to one side, I'll pinch that up ever so slightly more. You can see that we've got this lovely tail of wire. And as for me, I really enjoy having coils on my designs. If you don't want a coil here, bring that tail end of wire to the inside of your design, trim that wire away, and then work hard to squish it into the gap so that it disappears and that the ends are flush. You want to be able to do this with your thumb so that you know if that goes onto somebody's wrist, it's not going to hurt them or catch on their body in any way. Having repeat customers come back year after year after year is down to care of your design and beauty of your, so many of you are making beautiful pieces. You've got a real eye for colour and a flair for design. If you add into that your extra caring to make sure that everything is super comfortable, it will last a long time and you'll end up with repeat customers. Or if you're just making for pleasure and you gift to your family and friends, then they will beg you for more, which is always good. So this has shrunk down to just over an inch now. What we're going to do is just pop a little coil on that, and I'm going to start coiling this up whilst I catch up with the comments. Thank you for sharing your immeasurable talents with us. Your marvellous sense of humour is the biggest attraction, though. You are an absolute diamond. Thank you, Teresa. I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. Sue says that shepherd's crook would be great having it on both sides on a bead bar so you can switch out beads on a change. on a chain. Absolutely. That's one of the things that I absolutely love doing, is making interchangeable jewellery, making something that can be one thing one day, one thing another day. So one of the pieces that I'm really proud of over the years, I'm just starting to turn around from here while I'm chatting, is making 3 bracelets that connect together into a great big necklace. And you can take it on holiday, and you've got so many different ways that you can wear it. You can kind of double it up, wrap it around as a bracelet. It's great to have options. So with that round form, I start with those round nose pliers and then switch to flat facing pliers, and then push that back towards my non-dominant hand. And I'm just going to get this to sit over the surface where those 2 wrapped coils meet, and then very, very gently I'm just going to give that a teeny tiny squish and get it to sit down. So I'm actually really quite pleased with that. What I can do is just quickly finish the other side so you can see the whole concept through. If you're working with a client, do you remember how I misjudged this? And it was slightly longer on this side than I wanted it to be. I'm not going to let that worry me. What I am going to do is make sure that I get a good size for my wrist. Or my mum has the same size wrist as me, despite being a much smaller lady. So I'll probably gift one of these to her. So I can see that I do need another 10 or so wraps of wire all together. So I might just take this round a couple of times on this end. Let's just get that under control. You can see that one of my wires is slightly broader. Can you see that? It's because it's circling around the wire before it. So I've just very, very gently pulled that out to one side, and I'm able to continue. So one more circle, I think, around there. Push that down into the coils and just pull that out of the way for a second. What I'm going to do now is to create a wrapped loop. If you've never seen one of these, if you can crack wrapped loops, you can crack almost anything in wire work. They're not difficult, but I use them pretty much every day. So I'm going to get a little angle on the end of that wire. I find the little wire guards I use for gemstone bracelets and necklaces on beadle and wire are a bit sharp. Sometimes they can be. I don't know if I have any with me, but what you can do, because it is it's like a 3/4 of a way round the wire. It sits almost like a drain pipe, I guess. If you're really, really cautious, the sharpness is on this end here, and you can very, very carefully just gently turn that over. I would recommend getting yourself some bent chain nose pliers with a reasonably fine tip. You can save projects in that way. So we're going back to that wrapped loop. Now I don't need a massive loop on this one, but I think I'm going to go again for number 3. There's no logic to that. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. I'm just going to draw that wire all the way around. I've taken it underneath. I meant to take it over the top. There we go. So we've got that roundish shape. And I'm just going to fill in. It's not perfectly round. I'm not going to stress about it. You can take a little bit longer and make it perfectly round if you want to. I'm just going to take that around until I've filled the gap in that centre just there. So the wire has gone a little bit baggy, and that's because I'm trying to get finished, because you must be bored of the sound of my voice by now. So let's tighten those coils up slightly, like so. And then I think we can get one more rotation with this wire. And then I'm going to cut it at the top. Now, I know I said earlier, if you're going to do this without coils, cut the wire at the bottom. I'm going to cut this one just at the top, just like so. Now look many, many more times. You can never look too many times. And I'm just going to snuggle that cut bit of wire away into the gap. And then I'm going to draw the other tail of wire over the top of it. Now the reason I'm doing that is because it will enable me to put the coil over that join. So if I hold on to that loop a second and just draw that wire into the gap, I can force that to fit in the hole. It's slightly gappy, so tidy that up just slightly. And then what I will do is exactly the same as I did on this side, trim that to around about 1 inch or so. And again, I have got plenty of excess wire to work with. And if I just bring back the other piece I showed you quickly earlier, this is very, very similar technique, but rather than cutting at the ends as we have been doing, what I did is I took the wire back around in the opposite direction, which is why I tend to start off with great big long lengths, a 3-foot length, 36 inches of wire, because it means that I can change my mind on what I'm doing if I want to. So we're just going to finish off now with a tiny, tiny wrapped loop. So round form to begin with those round pliers, rotate, rotate, which is something my head's doing a lot today. And then we're going to push that back into my non-dominant forefinger to create a really nice, neat spiral or coil if you prefer. I'm going to bring that all the way back to the double coiled section where those two coils meet, and I'm going to flip it back over where they join up. Now what you might need to do is just fine up that angle on the last little coiled bit, just so that it sits really neatly. And then to enable you to get into this wrapped loop a little bit more easily, you can use round nose pliers for this, but I really like to use the multi-step bail makers. I'm just going to rotate that coil down. And it looks really strange, and people have said, oh, did you damage your bracelet? It's bent. It's like, no, it's not bent. It's like that to make life easier. I want to be able to get my jewellery on without help. I want to be able to do it myself. So that's turned into being quite a petite bracelet, or bangle rather. If we compare it to the other one, it's just a little bit smaller. So that is the crux of the design. And you can absolutely add more layers, more layers. They don't have to be tight against the beads. They can be skirting around in great big whopping arcs. I think that might be my new band name, Great Big Whopping Arcs. So there you go. That is your Earl Grey mini mix. Let me just see if I've got those beads to hand. This is just what's left. Oh no, here we go. Hang on. I've still got them in the Padparadscha. So those are the beads that you get in the Earl Grey mini mix, and this is what we have made with them together today. Now, I've done an awful lot of talking, and that's because I like people to fully understand how to recreate the design. I'm not into keeping trade secrets. If I've managed to teach myself something, I want to share it with you so that you can enjoy it as well. Yvonne says, thank you, you're a real gem. I massively enjoyed this tutorial. You're an absolute love. Thank you for saying that. That's so kind. Sue loves the bangle. And Sharon says, thank you. Let's just pop back up to my face. Hello, it's me. I'm currently feeling like I'm on a boat. So you'll forgive me if I'm a little bit funny today, but that's the story. I have something called, I've forgotten what it's called. What's it called now? Labyrinthitis, and it's nothing to do with David Bowie. So those are the bangles. We made the full tutorial together today with our beautiful Earl Grey mix here at Jessie James Beads, available both in the United Kingdom and in the US, shipping out to Europe from the UK as well. So if you fancy having a go at that, you can grab Earl Grey using the links that I popped into the video description. Quick look at those comments before I go. Trudy, love it. Thank you so much. Linda, some great techniques today. Sharon, I'll watch it again. Good plan. It's always there for you. It'll be on the blog, it'll be on YouTube, and it'll be here forever as well, I imagine. Karen says, thank you, feel better. Nina says, appreciate you. I love this bracelet. Going to make it today. I really hope you enjoy it, darling. Thank you so much. It's like vertigo. Yes. Very nice. Love your classes. Thank you. That's really sweet of you. Sherry loves, says, thank you. Thank you very much, sweetheart. And Sarah says, thank you, Jem. Your tutorials are always full of great tips. I am going to love you and leave you now. I'm going to go and have a glass of lemonade with some pomegranate syrup in it because I feel like a treat. You guys are the best. It's my pleasure to be with you here at Jessie James Beads. Have a great afternoon, evening, morning, whatever time it is. I don't know. It's probably midnight somewhere around the world, isn't it? So take care, and I'll catch you very, very soon. I'm back on Wednesday in Beads and Bloom, and then I'll be doing you a pre-record on Saturday right here on Facebook, as well as another class in at Beads and Blooms. Lots and lots of love to you, and I will catch you very, very soon. Bye for now, my loves.